Hip hop is not dead. Welcome back to Wednesdays with Wilfred. I'm your host, Wilfred Samke, and this week we're honored with alumnus and asked for grad, Sharath Cherian, the founder and CEO of HipHopDX, the leading industry publisher for all hip hop music, and he's going to walk us through his journey to becoming and building his empire. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sharath.
It's great to be here.
I have the pleasure of listening to your podcast on Rebel Radio. And on it, you spoke about how you started.
When I was 16, 17, just getting into hip hop fully, I'd buy the Source magazine or Rap Pages, and I'd look at the back of these magazines, and we couldn't listen to a lot of the music that was coming out as quickly. So it'd be like months if we got it on CD, and other months you just wouldn't even get some of the stuff because they were only ever put onto a mixtape and never really put onto a way of purchase, right? So maybe just hit a single, like it was record singles, and the records we got up in Winnipeg at the time, those were going for like $14, $15. I mean, they were just ridiculous. Like you couldn't, and even then you weren't getting everything. You were just getting a limited amount of stuff. So it really just came down to the fact that when my parents, we took a trip to Toronto and then drove down to New York, and I just kept reading about these things called mixtapes. And so I picked up a couple of them on that road trip, and then I called one of the DJs out of Toronto, Mastermind, and another DJ, a couple other DJs from New York. Mastermind got back to me right away, and he started just shipping me mixtapes. I got them at 6 and sold them at 10, and eventually was just moving 60 hip hop and 60 R&B tapes in Winnipeg. But like I would do flyers, and I would go to the local stores. Skate, still there. They used to sell my mixtape. Let me afford my first pager, so that was funny. But yeah, that was kind of the starting of my entrepreneurship within hip hop.
I love that. And now here we are today, HipHopDX, one of the most well-recognized publishers when it comes to anything hip hop related, but especially the music. How did you create this amazing hip hop empire?
I wouldn't call it an empire. I like to call it the small business that could. We just kind of kept growing and growing, from our roots in Winnipeg, in my parents' basement in South St. Vital, to Los Angeles over long periods of time. And it was just really trying to learn and understand the market. The Canadian market, hip hop market, is much different than the American hip hop market. And it's really just steps upon steps upon steps of sort of building and building and building. And the years it takes to build something that that can make an impact, and create a brand that can make an impact. So again, I don't look at us as an empire. I know we are trying to become one, but we definitely, I would say, have a good amount of influence in the space. We're keeping people informed on what's going on day to day in hip hop music, within hip hop culture. So that's how I kind of like to think of us.
And how does a young alumni from the University of Manitoba make such a big impact in Los Angeles? It's the gold standard for news publications when it comes to hip hop music around the globe.
We actually focus on hip hop music culture, and the music's really important in that. Like, we don't necessarily focus on hip hop culture, and the reason being is that it's wide. There's a lot of types of things we can chase after, and if we do that, we're just not going to be focused on really the information. And so when a user comes to the website, so a user comes to one of our social media outlets, what are they actually getting at the end of the day? What's their goal? I think while we do that and we have our focus, that's really going to help the user understand why they're there every day.
And you've had some of the biggest names in the industry. Is there a certain level of comfort that comes through when they do sit down with one of your writers, or they do sit down with someone that's representative of HipHopDX?
Yeah, I think there is a sense of familiarity, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure your interviews come correct. You can't just, otherwise then you get a bad name. So you have to make sure the people you hire really know their stuff, really excited to be here. And that's, I think, one of the big things that's changed. I think a lot of people early on the team sort of fell into the job, and now it's more targeted. Like, this is something you really got to want to do. You want to be a hip hop journalist. When I was younger in Winnipeg, I was getting my friends to write reviews. So that's really not the same sort of hiring process as it used to be.
And we love to say from the University of Manitoba, you can go anywhere, and you're a true example of that. My next question is around what motivates you and what gave you that can-do attitude.
As watching entrepreneurship and learning about it and understanding it over the years, I think a lot of the drive is innate. You're kind of born with this not take no for an answer. I guess also some of it has to do with my parents too. So it's kind of this weird, like, you need the pressure. At the same time, you also, weirdly enough, needed the I hate to say the ego, but you did to sort of like brush it off and keep it moving. And I also joke to a lot of people, entrepreneurship sometimes is just about showing up and playing ball. As long as you're smart, you're generally smart, you know how to add and subtract and you know how to do, because numbers are really important. When you have all that stuff down, then the rest of it is just showing up every day, and not giving up after year 4 or year 6 or year 8. Depending on where you are in your career and you decide to take on entrepreneurship as a path for you, and you don't have to do that, right? Like, it's just a choice that you're going to make. If you decide to do that, you have different experiences in life. So I've definitely seen entrepreneurs who are in their 40s go at starting a business and be successful much quicker than somebody who's younger, because they just have connections. They understand how markets work in a certain way. So they're just in a different space in life to build from, versus somebody who just went out from college, or versus somebody who didn't even go to college and just came from high school to try to do it. So it's a lot of it has to be self-taught. I joke with artists sometimes, I'm like, you're going to college one way or another. So you're either in the studio with some of the biggest names and you're learning how to do it. Either you're going to be the guy who absorbs the information, or you're going to be thinking this is really fun. And yeah, you can have fun with it. That's really important. But at the end of the day, you're going to college no matter what. You're going to spend your next 3 to 5 years learning at a minimum, if not more.
You touched on so many great points. One of them is fail often so you understand how to succeed. The other great point that you made is it's still a job. A lot of people forget that these artists, they're in the studio, they're with producers, they're with marketing, and we see the lavish lifestyle via Instagram. We can make assumptions all we like, but at the end of the day, you're really there on the ground, feeling the pulse of the artist. And leading into that, how do you feel has the genre evolved with artists, lyrics, fashion, and other influences now that we're in 2021?
Well, you have a lot of artists growing up on other rappers. Before, when I was growing up in hip hop, they were growing up on R&B stars. They were growing up in interestingly political times, or their parents did, or they did too. I mean, you're talking about a lot of the Black Panther movements in the 70s, in the late 70s. So and the music that was talked about and like the Motown era, that was a lot of the influence. So you get a lot of that influence in the remixes, in the beats, such as that. And then later on, like the artists of today, since they're growing up on other rappers, I think some of it's changed. I would say the lyrical flow isn't as technical as it used to be. I think there was a time, I think it went from like not technical to super technical for a while, and then it kind of has gone back now. And I don't really see it getting super technical again. And when I say technical, I'm still talking about like Outkast and Mobb Deep, and I don't see that sort of repeating itself. I think that was really a set period of time that made sense. You're also seeing a genre getting, seeing its age. So just like country music, you have people listening to older hip hop and younger hip hop, and you're starting to see that separation of like, people just listening to their artists. So that's really changed. Before, it used to be more of a cultural movement, and you're a hip hop listener and you were part of the culture, or you weren't. And now it's more like, okay, well, people will listen to certain artists here and there. So I think that's where a lot of the changes happened. I don't ever believe the music gets worse at all. Like it just comes down to where does it go and how does it flow and how does it change. I never subscribe to the idea that like, oh, that music was better in my day. Like, no, I think that's a big fallacy. I really just believe that music's going to change. At the end of the day, there's only so many people can consume it at any given, like depending on your age categories, how you can consume the music. So it is geared towards like, the 16 to 28-year-old single or like just married person, because that's the stories they're telling. Those are the people who have the time to go to concerts on a consistent basis. Those are people who have extra money to spend at the time on things like these. So that's just what's going to come out. If there were, a bunch of 6-year-olds who are really like millions and millions of 6-year-olds who are ready to go to concerts and stuff like that, that would build up. And that's exactly what kind of has built up with artists like Journey and Rolling Stones and all those guys. I mean, they're kind of seeing there later, but that is where the market goes. There's no point in sitting there going, well, why can't it be this way? Or why can't it be that way? Because you're wasting your energy at that point. Like it's like you're going to suddenly make a whole population like not have kids till they're 35. So you can now market till they're 35. No, I mean, those are just reasonable man. And so that's just kind of how it goes. And that's why a lot of the artists are really big when they're younger and kind of lose steam when, you know, they get to their mid 30s. It has nothing to really do with like, are they good or not? It has to do more with where everyone else who sort of grew up with them are in their life.
I love the fact that you talk about the economics and the business side of music. Your Asper School of Business lens on those situations makes a huge difference. What's next for the future? And is there anything that you would tell local artists or hip hop stars, like from the Muzos, Miazways, Lavishes, YSM Fab?
You know, for HipHopDX, I truly believe we're kind of just in the, you know, we're in the early stages of empire building, and, you know, the empire that you talk about, I think, you know, you'll see become of it in the next 10 years. You know, I'm still working on it full time, still trying to build it. And I have great ambitions to make it a much more stronger brand, make its things, give tools for people and fans to connect to each other and then connect to the artist. That's really, really important to me. In terms of Winnipeg and what advice I can sort of give up and coming artists is, there's two sort of things you got to think about. One, you have to create runway. Like, so you're an artist and you have to learn how to do what you need to be an artist. Like, you have to learn how to be an artist. You know, being an artist isn't just something that just happens. You know, even Neo was writing lyrics when he was in like 6th, 7th grade. You know, like, he was writing his own lyrics. You can take two paths. You can write you can either write your own lyrics or you can do cover songs. You know, I mean, yes, everyone recognizes a cover song and everyone will like you today. But if you can't make your own music later on, so I think they're two distinct paths. So if you're going to train yourself one way or the other, you got to choose right at the beginning and go one way or the other. You know, you can't. Doing both is kind of really a hard thing to do. Once you've chosen that path, you should be working on it for 6 to 8 years before you even think someone's going to like. And when I say 6 to 8 years, you better be working on about, in a week, maybe like 15 hours to 20 hours a week. You know, for 6 to 8 years before you think someone's going to pick you up. You're not going to pick up the mic at 60 or at 16 and believe that you're going to be signed by 18. You know, like, there are one or two of those people who are super lucky and super talented individuals. And you need your runway in order to learn the business and learn what's going on in it and check things out and figure out how to do this, how to do that, how to tour, you know, like that. And that's really the make it or break it for any artist, because the label is going to make its money early on, you know, and it's not going to care about you till the next album comes out unless you're touring and going out there, and they'll support it. But you waking up, going on a tour bus, going to bed, you know, being in like 20, 30 cities, doing it over and over again for the first 4 years, that's a grind. Something that has changed, which is I thought really great, is that like Instagram has allowed for a lot of the women artists to become mothers. And that wasn't truthful or a truism back in anywhere from the 90s, 2000, even the 80s, 90s, 2000s. It wasn't really until Instagram popped up that allowed women to have children and still be artists, which is an amazing feat. And that's great. So that's why you have way more women rappers than you did in the past, is because as soon as they had kids, like Nelly Furtado, what is she doing? You know, she was a huge
she's
artist,
at the top.
huge.
Yeah, she was huge.
But you still see a gap because she was really at the tail end when Instagram started. So she didn't necessarily want to make her life public like that, right? But most of the artists now are completely comfortable with it because they just grow up with Instagram being part of their flow. It's telling a story consistently over time that people buy into, even though you're deciding not to tour all the time, you know? But then you got to figure out what else you're going to get those people so you can make revenue during that time.
And I hope all our alumni and music grads and anyone who wants to move into entertainment, because I think this is so applicable and beyond entertainment. I know you're in Los Angeles right now, but you could grab one thing from Winnipeg and bring it to Los Angeles. What would that be?
I mean, it'll always be the Jets, but you know, I get to Winnipeg a lot. I was there actually over summer while COVID was raging. Because it was a lot calmer in Winnipeg. So we drove up from LA and got to spend some time there and spend some time with my parents. My parents are still there, so I'm always going there consistently. So I love Winnipeg. It always feels like home. It always feels comfortable. It always feels quiet and safe. You know, I think that's, you know, for every fear that anybody has about Winnipeg, about this being a bad neighborhood or anything like that. Yeah, no, I don't really, you know, I can't compare to that anymore. It's just all of it's like super easy and super nice. And so I enjoy it for that.
thank you so much for joining us on behalf of the whole alumni relations team. Sharath, thank you for spending the afternoon with us. We're so thankful. We're so proud of you. And we will try our best to help you continue to build that empire that HipHopDX has become.
Thank you, Wilfred. Appreciate it.